What's up, everybody? I'm back with another Soul Lane guide video. This time we're going to be talking about the top 5 gods and their builds with some honorable mentions in there as well. You guys were patient enough to wait for this video. I do apologize that it took so long, but I was out of town last week. You guys know this. And I didn't want to just upload a video right away, right when I got home, without having the data or evidence to back up my thoughts. But I feel like I'm pretty comfortable with it right now, and I'm not just going to be BSing you guys for views or anything like that. So, yeah, thanks for being patient for it. And like always with these videos, this is going to be a ranked and casual list with a little bit of SPL involvement. And also take everything I say with a grain of salt. If you feel like a character should be higher on the list than they are on my list, or maybe you think a character should be on the list that I don't even have on the list, don't worry about it. Comfortability is very, very important in Soul Lane and knowing your matchups and all that. So keep that in mind. If you're having a lot of success with a character that I don't even have in my top 5 or honorable mentions, don't worry about it. Some quick notes before we get into the top 5 is that overall, I actually don't think too much has changed. I think that warriors are definitely still viable, especially when it comes to snowballing in the mid game. Their builds are just going to be a little bit different, which we'll talk a good amount about in this video. And I don't think guardians are the end-all be-all, just because I think across the map, there's a lot of stuff that's hard to kill, especially your own blue buff. And a lot of the guardians can't just walk in and sow their own blue. They have to really rely on their jungler. And if you're relying on your jungler and just getting camped by your jungler, you can basically play anything in the game in the Soul Lane and have some success. So that's something to keep in mind. Warriors still are really good at just being independent and you know, getting the job done and maybe like carrying across the map. So keep that in mind before we get into the top 5. Well, without further ado, let's get into the top 5. I do think that the meta is going to be very, very loosey-goosey, and what I mean by that is it's going to be a lot of gods that can clear really well and then rotate and impact the map, just because a lot of the bullies in lane aren't going to do as well without the access to Glad Shield and Berserkers. So because of that, coming at number 5, I have Vamana. Vamana is a very, very good character at just, you know, basically clearing the wave, being very hard to kill and gank. If you ever proxy as Vamana, the jungler never really wants to come to you. You're like the back camp bandit. You can just kind of rotate and kind of dash everywhere. Once you have CDR, you're just going to be able to dash from lane to lane and kind of just hyper farm and be able to carry in the mid game. The only thing you have to worry about is the access to Curse Dunk right now, but it was already good against him before. It's really not that much better now. And Curse Dunk does get a lot of value with all the lifesteal builds right now, so keep that in mind. But overall, I think it's worth it for Vamana. He's just going to be very, very good at hyper farming. He's going to be a very safe pick, and with the pretty much the same build as you went before, he's going to be doing pretty well. Warrior's Blessing, of course, I think Warrior's Blessing is just a really sick item even after the changes to it, maybe even better now. You're going to be going Warrior's Blessing into Ninja Tabai. I think the attack speed you get from Ninja Tabai, plus the mana. The mana is really big on Vamana, in my opinion. Helps with his mana cost early game, helps him spam. You're going to be going Breastplate. First item, Breastplate, again, mana and CDR and Vamana. It's the only CDR item you're going to get for the rest of your build, and it's going to carry you in the mid game because you're going more of a hybrid auto attack ability based build. It's going to help you out a lot. With Vamana, I would not go Stone of Gaia because they're going to be building anti-heal for you anyway. So you kind of just lose a lot of value, and I think there's just better items for you to go that will make you more of a menace in the mid game. You're going to be going into the Sledge third item. Sledge, I don't really need to say much about it, but if you're new to the patch or you're still trying to learn, Sledge just has 300 health on it, a lot of stats, only 2,300 gold, and the passive is also nice when you're middle in the team fight. You can get up to 30 prots for each side. And then third item, I'm going to be going Talisman of Energy. So a little bit different. I like Talisman of Energy. I was building it on a lot of characters last patch, and I just think the 300 health combined with a 60 prot, all the health that you're building right now is going to be really good against those percent pen builds, not only as the mages but also for the physicals, just because health gets more value, especially against crit, and people are building crit right now as well. So keep that in mind. And then since there's so much anti-heal on the map right now, I almost always throw in a Toxic Blade. The thing about this is that it gives you a little bit of movement speed as well. It gives you 15 pen, which is going to help a lot with your damage and your ultimate because you get physical power there, and you get prots, which also gives you physical power because of a mana passive, and it just kind of allows you to kill the people on the map that have that double lifesteal, the Ring of Hecates, all that good stuff, and kind of helps you out. If there's a ton of healing on the map, you could also even switch out your Talisman of Energy for a Pestilence so that you can just dive them even harder. And this is where you kind of just have to figure out how the game's going. I actually like going a damage item last just because you're pretty hard to kill in your ultimate, so you can go for a Stone Cutting. I think that's probably one of the best single damage items for Vamana. But you could also mess around with something like Berserkers. If they have 3 physical, you can get some value out of that. So keep that in mind. And this is especially a good build for ranked just because, you know, you want to be able to carry in ranked. So go that. And that would be kind of similar to the final build. But if you don't want to have a damage item last, then you can always go for a Mantle. I do not recommend going Spirit Robe just because whenever you're in your ult, it won't get procced. Whereas your Mantle CC immunity, not the CC immunity, but the stun will proc in your ult. And that's pretty annoying for the enemy team. And you could also, if they're more physical based, I actually think Hide of the Nemean is a pretty good item. If they have crit, then you can obviously go the Spectral route. I think Hide of the Nemean with the block stacks is pretty underrated right now. So keep that in mind. But if they're more magical focused, you can always go for an Oni Hunters or like a Bulwark of Hope just to help you in the late game for tankiness. So we'll just throw a Mantle in there for safe measures. And then, of course, your Relic. I actually do not go TP on Vamana anymore. I think having Blink Thorns is probably the best bet you could go. With the access to healing and the prevalence of healing right now, then keep in mind that Curse Song would be pretty good even for the enemy team, also against you. But there's other relics that you can go. You can obviously, maybe go a Sprint if you want that. You could obviously upgrade that, and that's going to be good for diving people. You could also go Shell if they're more auto attack based. It's really good against these Golden Blade auto attackers in the jungle like Arachne, Baka, Nemesis, characters like that. But most of the time, I'd say 90% of the time, I'm going Blink and Thorns. And Vamana's just super safe. I don't think you're ever going to lose your team the game if you play it correctly in the laning phase. And you can also win your team the game in the mid to late game just because you have that hyper carry potential. And if you're really feeling spicy, then throw in a Hasten Katana. You could even go Boots, Breastplate, Talisman, Hasten Katana, and then get your Sledge just so you can have that rundown potential even early on. So yeah, that is Vamana at number 5. At number 4, we are going to have Hades. Now, that might come as a surprise to some of you, especially with all the shit I've talked about Hades throughout the years. But I actually think with this recent patch and the access to lifesteal and the sustain, just the fact that you out-sustain pretty much everybody, the pressure that you have just by clearing every wave instantly from the get-go, from literally level 1. And the fact that Hades is really good at the blue buff because of all the phantoms that spawn, you can one-shot the blues and out-secure pretty much everybody on the map and get a ton of damage off if they walk into it. He just has so much snowball potential, a lot more than most warriors these days just because of, the Glad Shield and Berserkers changes. So I actually think he's really strong, especially in ranked. And if you really want to grind ranked and get some wins in the solo lane, then I would say start spamming Hades. And the start that you can do, now there's a couple things you can do. You can still do the classic Bancroft's 2 start and just go TP and then TP back in. Or maybe you don't even have to go TP, you can just go Blink. I like to go Blink first on him. Blink is just such a good relic. Allows you to make plays early game. It's also a safe relic because you can get away with it. But it also just, increases your late game potential. Then you can have like 2 teamfight relics. You can use a Blink and then chase them out after with your dash. But what I've been going lately is straight into purple boots. So what I mean by this is that you sit in base. Do not start a starter item. Don't go any pots. Go tier 2 boots. Wait until you have enough gold for the full boots. And then run with your pyro buff because at the beginning of the game you get a pyro buff. Your purple boots and your pyro buff. Run to your blue buff and just one-shot that bad boy with your jungler. And you'll get there at like 30 seconds basically right when it spawns anyway. So you're not really losing out on any time. And it's going to give you a lot of pressure in lane. You have so much sustain as Hades that you don't really need pots and all that stuff. It's just going to accelerate your build by a mile, right? And then this is where things get tricky. I like to go into just a Bancroft's straight into a Typhon's. Now you're probably thinking, okay, well you don't have any defense, but the thing is, you get so much sustain from these items. You're gonna outtrade the enemy solo laner, no doubt. If you ever get ganked, you have so much turn and kill potential, especially if they haven't built anti-heal this early on. They literally have to rush anti-heal to deal with you at all, and you're already gonna be snowballing and getting a big lead just because you're Hades and instant clearing waves under their tower. That it's gonna be really hard for them to deal with you, and you're just gonna be able to invade blues and stuff like that. So I like to go this build, especially with the strength and potency of Spear of the Magus right now. I'll be going that 4th item, gives you that flat pen so you can do work in the team fights. And then you can round it out with some defense item to finish the game just so you don't get one shot in the late game team fights. Or I like to usually go this just because Prism will prac after your ult. If you get a nice ult off, get some people, and then come out of it, you're going to have the full CDR and then you're going to have the shield afterwards, which is going to be pretty useful. Or you can just go for the full damage route. You have a lot of options here. Last time you could go Ethereal, you could go Soul Reaver. I think if you're really just trying to get in there and one-shot somebody, I would go for either the Soul Reaver or maybe the Spear of Deso, because that also gives you a lot of damage on their carries. So you have a lot of options here, but if you're not too comfortable with Hades, then I would just go for the more tankiness route. Again, you do a lot of damage with this build. Just these 4 items alone, you're going to be one-shotting their squishies, and keep in mind that in Hades ult you get, I think it's 320 prots, 160 of each, something ridiculous like that. And of course, second relic, Thorns is an option. I also think that Beads is a very safe option on Hades just because you're building more damage here. And if you have these 4 items and you're about level 14 and you walk over to a team fight, it's going to be really, really nice to have a Beads just to help you out in that regard. So these are probably the only 3 relics I go most of the time. Maybe you could go something like Shell or something, but I don't know. And yeah, that's the build. Hades, definitely really strong right now. Very good sustain, and he's going to be snowballing a lot of games in rank. So be careful, or maybe just abuse him. There you go. Coming in at number 3, we have Arthur. The king isn't dead, guys. I want you to think about this with me for a second, just logically. All of the characters, or at least all of the warriors and assassins, no longer have access to the Glad Shield and Berserkers, which means a lot of those characters, even if they have self-sustain in their kit, lost some sustain, right? Including Arthur. Arthur literally has no self-sustain in his kit. But if you were to think about it logically, that means that Arthur is still going to be doing the same amount of damage that he was doing before. He's still going to have more abilities than everybody on the map. And if he goes like a Stone of Gaia plus a Chalice, you're still going to be sustaining a lot, and just as much as like any other character that doesn't have sustain in their kit, right? The only matchups you might want to be like more careful against with him is the early bullies that do have sustain, like Camazotz and Amaterasu. But for the most part, you can just survive that, and you'll be a menace in the mid-game regardless, especially with this build I'm about to show you. So yeah, King Arthur, not dead. He's going to be number 3, and the build is going to be as follows. Right now, most of the time, you should just be rushing boots. There's not really a clear first item to be going, just because there's not like a bridge item in solo really anymore, besides if you're like a magical, like Stone of Binding or something. And you don't go tank boots anymore because you're not getting any power from another item, at least in the early game, right? You're going to need that extra power, the 40 power, in order to like clear buffs. You don't want to be just like a stupid soul laner who can't even go and like one-shot his own blue, right? You want to be able to have that power in the early game, and you're going to rush the boots, and you're going to be going into Stone of Gaia. And of course on Arthur, I think you should always go teleport because you're going to be going teleport beads for the most part. Almost every game you want to have beads, but there's some scenarios where they don't have a lot of CC, and you can get away with blink. If you are comfortable with going blink beads, then maybe go for it, but for the most part, I think abusing your power specs with Arthur is really strong. And this is where it gets a little, maybe not weird, but you're going to have no early game prots from these 3 items. But the thing is, you get 400 health from this and 300 health from this, and Stone of Gaia obviously heals off your maximum amount of health, that this is going to give you so much sustain, basically the same amount of sustain as Glad Shield pre-patch, and you're still going to be out-trading people with the amount of abilities and damage that you do just based on your base damage. I mean, Glad Shield wasn't the only reason Arthur was OP, right? He still has 9 abilities, 8 abilities, however many abilities. I always get it wrong, but who cares? This is where things get more standard after that. You're going to be going into the Void Shield just so you can actually do some damage haze. Into the Genjis, the only difference from last patch is that usually you went Onis here, but you have no CDR on your build apart from your blue buff, so I think getting Genjis is nice. And rounding it out with a Mantle is always good. Or you could go a Spirit Robe here. It's really up to you. Boom, like that. And that would be your full build. I just noticed for this video, I haven't been showing you what you can sell for boots, but for the most part, it's really not that big of a deal. You can kind of go a lot of different items in place of boots on every character, and you'll still feel pretty good about it. So, yeah, this is a pretty standard build, I think, for Arthur right now. The only difference, like I said, is that you're not going to have as much CDR in the early game. You know, Glad Shield give you 10% and you have blue buff, so 20% versus 10%, not that big of a deal. But Arthur is still going to be very strong. In lane, once you get these items, you're going to out-trade a lot of people, but also just, you know, across the map, even in the mid-game. And if you have beads, it's going to be really hard for them to take you down in the team fight. You're going to be very hard to kill. So, Arthur at number 3. At number 2, we're going to have Amaterasu. That wasn't planned, but regardless. I went ahead and saved the build just because I wanted to speed up this video just a little bit, just because I didn't want it to go for 40 minutes. But yeah, this is the build. Ama, I think, is just number 2. She's very good at getting loose. She's very good around objectives. She doesn't fall off because she's pretty good late game. And she's still a bully in the early game and has a lot of sustain in her one. So there's really no reason not to pick her. She's probably just one of the best overall warriors right now. And that's why I have her at number 2. The build is just going to be a little bit different from last patch. A couple items that you see are different. So obviously you're going to go Warrior's Blessing. I don't have that in the build right here. I'll just throw it down here just for posterity or whatever word you want to throw in there. It doesn't matter. But we're going to go into Ninja Tabai, straight into Sledge. This is going to give you a lot of early game damage. And the 300 health you get from this is actually going to provide you a good amount of tankiness combined with the procs that you get from Warrior's Blessing. Now, this is where it gets a little bit different. Berserker Shield, 2,500 gold. Not the greatest amount of stats for 2,500 gold. But the thing is that it just gives you a lot of offensive power. You're going to be so strong with these 3 items. And then into your Shoguns, which is also going to give you attack speed. You have a crap ton of attack speed with these 3 items. And it's just, especially if you go Frenzy, you're going to have even more. And you're just going to be a menace around those team fights and around those like Gold Furies and the Fire Giants. And then you're going to go into the Void Shield. Void Shield is still a very, very good item. You'll see it pretty common in your games and also just in this video. And then you're going to round it with a Mantle or a Spirit Robe. Usually Mantle is the go-to if you can afford it, but Spirit Robe also isn't bad. You have a long duration CC in your ult, so maybe that's the only reason you might not want to go Spirit Robe on Ama, but at the end of the day, it's not that big of a deal. And yeah, this is a very, very strong offensive build. You're going to do a lot of damage with this. You're also going to be pretty hard to kill. The 300 health you get from this is going to carry a lot of the build just because you don't get health from this or this or this, but you get 150 from Void Shield, so no big deal. I don't think you need Stone of Gaia on Ama just because you already have a lot of sustain in your one. I just think the offensive power that you get from a build like this, you don't have to go this exact build, but from a build like this where you just get like Sledge or maybe like an early Void Shield into Shoguns, like I think you're going to do a lot more with that, especially when it comes to the team fights around Gold Fury. And you want to rotate often and earlier as Amma, just because you have that rotation power with your movement speed, with your good clear, and just the fact that you get really loose, like I talked about. So as far as the relics go, teleport always on Amma. I think when you get a power spike on Amma and TP back into lane, it's really, really strong. And late game, I think you're strong already. You don't really need blink on Amma. You don't really need a CC immunity like beads or anything like that. So you can kind of just have a TP to try and snowball the early to mid, and then have the late game power of Amma by your side. Frenzy, very, very good in Amma, in my opinion, especially combined with Shoguns. It allows you to do a ton of damage to everybody on the map, but it also just helps you with the objectives, which Amma is already good at because of her passive. And then you can also go Horrific or Shell. Horrific and Shell, I think, are a little bit underrated right now. You could buy it on a lot of gods in solo just because of all the auto attack characters in the game, especially in the jungle with the Golden Blade and all that. But upgrade Horrific going to be really strong, and upgraded Shell going to be really strong against them. But for the most part, it's Teleport, Frenzy. And then you could sell boots for maybe like another offensive item like Stone Cutting or like Serrated Edge if you're getting real crazy. Who knows? But not really that big of a deal what you sell boots for. But this is going to be the core of the build, and that's Amma at number 2. Definitely going to be a good pick for the time being. And of course, before we get to our number 1 spot, we have our honorable mentions, plural, because we're going to have 2 honorable mentions today. The first one is going to be Zhang. Magical characters, I think, are just going to be a little bit stronger this patch, and Zhang also got buffed before. And combined with the new Warrior's Blessing, I just think he's actually pretty strong, and he can get away with some like pretty janky builds. And as you can see here, this is what I'm talking about. So pretty similar build to Hades. I think if you go this double lifesteal route or triple lifesteal even, and just go more damage with the new Spear of the Magus and Ethereal rounded out with the Mantle. Like early game, you're actually really tanky with Zhang passive plus Warrior's Blessing fully stacked, and you'll just have so much return damage, sustain, and just like outplay potential on their jungler, right? If you go defense against their jungler and you get ganked, you kind of just have to run away. But when you go a build like this, it allows you to like be able to solo your own blue. It allows you to be able to kill their jungler if he ever is looking for you or if you're looking for him, and it gives you a lot of power in these team fights where you're going to be able to actually like solo their backline before they can kill you with all their percent pen. If you're not comfortable with a build like this, then I do have a more tanky build down here. So Shoes of the Magi into Celestial Legion Helm, Voidstone, Spear of the Magus, Ethereal into Mantle. You don't really need CDR on Zhang. You can go for a Breastplate instead of a Celestial here, and then you'll have the CDR early game, but still do a decent amount of damage. But for the most part, you still want to be that Blink Initiator with Zhang, where you're going to actually do a lot of damage and be threatening with your Blink, and not just be some fat boy that's not even gonna really do much with it. You don't want to just get shredded down right when you blink in. You still want to have a lot of damage, but I would recommend trying to get used to this build. But if not, then just go for a more tanky route, but still something similar to this build. And then, of course, your Relic. Most of the time, you're going to need TP, just Blink, TP, Blink. You always want Blink on Zhang Solo. That's the strength of him, is your Blink initiation. And if you don't go Blink, then you're kind of useless. Don't go Blink Aegis. I think that's horrible if you just walk at them. You can go for a Blink Beads. If you can skip your TP and get used to that, then that's something you can go for. Or a Blink Aegis, because something you can do with Zhang is you can Aegis when you ult, and your ghost will actually be flying out of you while you're immune to damage. So you'll be doing damage while being immune to damage. And both these actives are going to be pretty good for a build like this, just because you're going to be a little bit squishier than you normally would be, although you're still going to be pretty tanky with this build. Keep that in mind. You have a lot of health throughout it. And a lot of sustain, and think of sustain as effective health. But yeah, that's Zhang as our first honorable mention. Coming in as our second honorable mention, we have Wukong. Wukong's just another character that's very good at getting loose. He's good at clearing the wave and running and rotating and doing all that, and just being a general like nuisance among the map. You don't really ever want to gank him when he's proxying as a jungler, and he can kind of just do whatever he wants. And he's also really good with the new Soul Eater. Wukong's traditionally speaking been like a pretty good user of Soul Eater, but he's even better now. And I went ahead and put the build in already. So it starts out pretty simple, either Mage's Blessing or Warrior's Blessing. Warrior's Blessing if you're not as comfortable, but Mage's Blessing obviously very good for farming and everything like that. I would definitely recommend trying to get used to Mage's Blessing just because it's pretty fun on him and pretty useful and good for him. But you're going to be rushing into the boots. I would not recommend going Soul Eater first. I would always go boots first. I just think that's the best first item for most characters in the game right now, and you can't really go wrong with it, especially because you're not going to be going TP on Wukong. I recommend not going TP. It allows him to be very, very useful in the mid to late game, just having 2 teamfight relics, especially if you're going to be going a more damaging build. You might want to think about going into a beads combined with the blink. But if you're going a more tanky build, like say you have Mantle here instead of Heartseeker, then you could probably go for Thorns instead of the beads. But other than that, yeah, so it's boots into Soul Eater. You're going to get that stacked up pretty fast. Soul Eater combined with Sledge is really, really nice. I think it's a nice wombo. It gives you a ton of early game damage. And Wukong is pretty hard to kill regardless. I don't think you're going to get you're not going to get out-traded in lane all that much, especially if you just ignore them, get loose, and just use your damage early game to your advantage by trying to hyper farm. into a pretty standard rest of your build. Void Shield Oni is pretty good tankiness, but also gives you good bruiser potential, gives you some good damage. And I like Heartseeker last item, especially if you're going to go beads. This is going to give you a lot of late game threat on their backline. You're going to do a lot of damage, especially combined with the Wukong passive that when you get low, you get protections or power. And yeah, but if you're not comfortable with that, like always, you can just go throw in a Mantle last item. You'll be really tanky with this build. Be hard to kill, but you also do a good amount of damage regardless. So yeah, Wukong, pretty good, honorable mention, and you know, just try him out. I think he's really fun right now with the Soul Eater. So, and last but not least, coming in at number 1, you guys probably guessed it. It is Cthulhu. The thing about Cthulhu is he's been nerfed a little bit, but he is still a very, very potent character. He's good in lane, he's good in the mid game, and he's good in the late game. He's very, very hard to kill, and he has a big, big impact on the map through, I think, all points of the game. And for that reason, as a soul laner, I think that would make him a number 1 soul laner. And of course, he's also new, so people don't exactly know how to play around him, so you're going to be able to get a lot of wins with him, in my opinion, at least, for the next few weeks. I have the build already saved just to save some time, and this is going to be it. It's a little bit out of order, but no big deal. Pretty standard Guardian build, even from last patch. So you're going to be going Warrior's Blessing straight into Boots Rest on everybody, basically, into the Stone of Gaia. And the reason I think you go Stone of Gaia on Cthulhu is that you don't have sustain in your kit, but also the 400 health that you get in the early game is going to make your ult really, really impactful, because obviously you get increased maximum health based off your original maximum health, if that makes sense, whenever you go into your ult. So you're going to have a huge, huge health bar, especially because you're going to be going into a breastplate, which obviously doesn't give you any health, but I do think the CDR is going to be worth it. It's going to allow you to spam your 1s, spams your 2s in the teamfights, dash around, and then obviously get more use out of your ultimate abilities. Into a Void Stone, pretty standard across the board. Breastplate Void Stone's kind of been the go-to Guardian build for as long as I can remember. Into Ethereal, into Gauntlet of Thieves. What you'll notice is that Ethereal gives you health, a lot of health in fact, which is really, really nice for him. But also Gauntlet of Thieves gives you health and tankiness for both sides of the physical and magical spectrum. If they're more physical focused, then you can maybe fit in a Spectral, a Nemean. Nemean's going to be really annoying for them to deal with when you're in your ult. If you're blocking auto attacks in your ult with the amount of health that you have, it's going to be very, very potent. But if they're kind of just balanced across the board, which in most games they will be, then Gauntlet of Thieves is a go-to. But keep in mind that a lot of people are playing mages right now because of how potent and OP Ring of Hecate is. So at this very moment, then maybe some games you'll be going like an extra magical defense item, like Oni Hunters or Bulwark of Hope or something like that. But they are going to be nerfing Ring of Hecate, so this is more for like the next few weeks in the foreseeable future. This would be a pretty good late game build. You're going to be doing a decent amount of damage, but you're just going to be a huge nuisance. Very, very hard to kill in the team fights. A lot of CC, especially when you go into your ultimate with your knockups, healing through your 3. And yeah, that's all there is to it. Something to keep in mind with Cthulhu is that you can't pop your actives anymore while you're in your ult, which means that you have to use the active before you go into your ult. So if you have Thorns, which I do recommend Thorns on Cthulhu, just because it's going to make it really hard for them to try and burst you down or just DPS you on while you are in your ult, which basically means that you're going to just be in the middle of a team fight doing whatever you want anyway. But if they try and DPS you late game, you'll have that Thorns and you'll be able to just, like, you know, initiate really well. You don't really need Blink on Cthulhu, but it might just be something you can go anyway just to really, really get in there, try and dive really, really hard. But you don't exactly need it. And you don't have like a great CC to instantly blink and use, you know, besides maybe like a knockaway, I guess you consider his 3. But Heavenly, I also think is a pretty underrated active on him, is just because if you Heavenly and then go into your ult, that increased movement speed, you're going to have it for your entire team, and you're also going to have it for yourself, and you're just going to be able to run people down and overall just kind of have like, you know, your ult's a team fight ult, really. You're going to be in the middle of everybody. You're going to be able to heal them. You're going to knock out people and help out your team. And if you upgrade this bad boy and then just go into your ult, boom, you're going to be going ham skis, basically. So, yeah, Cthulhu, not really a surprise that he's number 1. Maybe it's a surprise to some people because I think some people think he's overrated, but I definitely do not. And keep in mind that once you have the Thieves fully stacked, you're going to be very, very tanky with this build. So, yeah, Cthulhu at number 1. He's a bad man. Squidward right here. Look at him. He's so beautiful. And guys, that's really all there is to it. That's going to be the end of the video. Hopefully, I pointed you guys in the right direction and helped you out with the mid-season patch, what to build, and the gods to be playing right now to win your games. Thank you for being patient once again. I really do appreciate it. And of course, if you liked the video or learned something from it, let's get a discussion going in the comments, because I think even myself, I have still a lot to learn about this patch and to test out and everything like that. So maybe we can get a discussion going and see what you guys have been enjoying playing and the builds that you've been going in the comments, because why not? But yeah, that's going to be it for me. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and stay safe and stay healthy like always. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.